So, last night when I was at work, I was getting steadily more and more excited about Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green as a possibility, maybe coming to the eShop. And I sat down and on my break, I wrote a list of things I want to talk about in terms of predictions and wishlist items for the inevitable Pokemon presents that would be coming up on Pokemon Day. And my plan was today to sit down and record this video and talk all about what I wanted and how excited I was for this potential rumored port of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. And then I woke up this morning and I found out that Nintendo, the buggers, had scooped me. And now instead of talking about how exciting that would be, I have to sit here and talk about the price of games and valuation in games and what a re-release should be and Pokemon being overvalued and dang it, I wanted to be excited about video games. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, here's what the video is going to be. First part is going to be the reaction to that, and the second part is going to be continuing on to actually do what I was going to do and predict other things about the Pokemon Presents. So, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. They're real. They're coming out on the 27th of February. They cost, I think it's 18 quid each, and they are very bare bones ports of the original GBA games. To be absolutely clear, this is pretty much what I was expecting, but I was still hoping for more because you can always hope for more. In fact, the rumor was that they were going to cost $30, so something more like £26-27. So my initial reaction was, oh good, it's cheaper than I thought it was going to be. But now more I think about it, the more I think that some leaks might actually just be guerrilla marketing tactics. And putting out a leak about this being maybe $30 and then releasing it for $20 sure would be a way to try and control the narrative about a bare bones port job and have people go, oh yay, it's cheaper than I thought it was going to be, instead of going, hey, those Capcom collections over there sure are a better value than whatever this is. People are saying that these games should be on the NSO Game Boy app, and I can see that. I never thought they were going to be, just because I know the Pokemon Company and Nintendo and Game Freak, right? And I know that this is one of the most successful and profitable franchises in the world, and I know that historically they haven't exactly been generous with pricing, and people would obviously buy this in droves. And I don't feel ashamed saying that I'm going to buy probably Fire Red. I'm not going to buy both versions because 18 quid is a bit steep to buy both versions. But yeah, I'm going to buy. I'm excited. I'm very excited, as I promised I would be. I haven't confirmed this. I have heard that 6 months down the line there will be Pokemon Home compatibility. If there isn't, then I think that would be kind of lame. And while I understand waiting 6 months for new Pokemon games to get home compatibility, I think it's a bit of a head scratcher when it comes to Fire Red and Leaf Green, considering they're not new games, they're old games. But yeah, for context, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green are my earliest Pokemon games that I played through, and I have exceptional fondness for them. They are my Gen 1, and so this is probably why I'm so biased towards being excited about these instead of aghast at the way that they are being given to us, I suppose. And it would be nicer if they gave us more, because let's not bat around the bush, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green are probably some of the most emulated video games in history, and I'm not exactly estranged from them myself, but I've always felt that playing the actual games on the actual hardware was the best experience, and hopefully, you know, this being an official release, it can feel that way instead of just another option of emulation. When I was concocting my predictions list last night, which I'm about to get into, I did say, like, well, maybe not predictions, but what I would like to see. It would be cool if we saw something more than just a re-release, like maybe they could do like a HD 2D style of Fire Red and Leaf Green. That'd be fun. Or maybe like they could include official randomizer and Nuzlocke modes, and maybe I could see them like locking out Pokemon Home compatibility for a randomizer save file. But if you do an official Nuzlocke run, maybe like have a little mark on any Pokemon you capture and then transfer, which you can only do when you beat the game, and then like have them forever marked as a Pokemon that survived a Nuzlocke run. That would be really fun. I also think it could be fun if they backported like future Pokemon Gen Pokemon into this game, especially if it was like for a randomizer run or something, and really just increase the diversity of Pokemon you can find in Kanto's environments, because a lot of us have played through this game several times, and that's why we play randomizer runs and Nuzlocke, because we want a new experience, and this is very much going to be a default vanilla experience, which I am down for, but you know, it would be nice if there was more to it. Also, I would like to see more than just Fire Red and Leaf Green, and to be fair, it's not Pokemon Day, we haven't had a Pokemon Presents. We still could. It feels very much like copium to predict that at this point, but we still could see more Pokemon games being released. And I think it could be cool if they did it in kind of like a monthly or bi-monthly kind of a way. Is bi-monthly every 2 months, or is it every 2 weeks? I mean every 2 months. But it'd be so cool if they're like, okay, this month we're dropping Leaf Green and Fire Red. Next month, or in a few months, we're dropping like Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And then after that, it gets a bit weird because it's DS games, and people say, how would you represent the DS games on a single screen experience? They've yet to announce any kind of DS emulation for NSO. I think they will. I think there's plenty of ways they could do it, especially with mouse mode. I think you've got the touch screen for handheld mode and mouse mode for full screen mode. And I think, there's every chance that we could see, gens 4 and 5, and then maybe even 6 and 7 down the line on the Switch too. I think that could be real fun. I've also seen people predicting / quote unquote leaking a Pokemon collection of Gens 1 and 2, and maybe that's gonna be announced as well. I'm not holding my breath on that because they already did that on 3DS, and while I do think it should be available on Switch as well, I don't know. And I think if they do sell it as a collection of like, in this collection you get red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, and crystal, they will sell it as a full price game and people will riot. Alright, now let's talk about non-old Pokemon game things and predictions for the Pokemon Presents. Now, predicting the future of Pokemon is a little weird right now because there were massive leaks, so for anyone concerned about avoiding those, here's the thing. I have glanced at them. I have not dug deep into them. So one of the things that I am about to predict, I know a little bit about, but honestly not that much. If you want to skip this next prediction, I will leave a timestamp to when it is safe if you want to hear absolutely nothing. Okay? Okay. So I think it would be weird if they didn't announce Gen 10 in this Pokemon Presents. You know, it's been long enough. It's been longer than usual, and it's the 30th anniversary. And so I should probably tell you what I know about Pokemon Gen 10. I know that it is called Pokemon Wind and Waves, and I know that we've seen a screenshot of a Charizard by a lake. That's all I really remember from what I glanced at. I think I know more. So some of my predictions might honestly be subconscious things that I already know about. That is the way memory works sometimes. But please do not tell me anymore because I would like to be surprised. So I think the whole Charizard by a lake thing, I think it's supposed to signify a greater exploration of the open world idea that was begun in Sword and Shield really with wild areas and then expanded upon for a full game in Scarlet and Violet. I think I remember hearing something about procedurally generated landscapes or something. I could be wrong on that though. But if so, yeah, maybe they're trying to go for more like, I don't know, like a more sprawling open world instead of what honestly felt with Violet to be more of like I don't know, it wasn't unexpected, it was kind of basic, so I would like to see more effort put into the world design and the sense of the world being this massive place to explore instead of just kind of a theme park of here's the ice area, here's the desert area, so on and so forth. Now, because predicting Gen 10 isn't exactly the craziest prediction in the world, I decided to dig a bit deeper and think about what I would like to see from the next mainline Pokemon game. And there's a few things. First of all, I would like to see a greater focus on narrative, and I mean that in a few ways. I would like to see more effort put into the story. I would like it to be a better story. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was dreadfully dull until the last few hours, and that was amazing. Take a look at those last few hours and, like, work on telling more stories like that, please. Give us interesting concepts, take us to interesting locations, and don't make us wait most of the main game to actually get to that point. Also, what I would really like is for them to make the story appealing to all ages, and I have concrete examples of what I want and what I don't want. What I don't want is another Scarlet and Violet, where the story... I mean, it's always going to focus on kids because it's Pokemon, and it should do, because it needs to appeal to kids. That's what the brand is primarily. But it was alienating to older audiences, I would say. You saw a lot of people complaining about, like, I don't want to be running around in a school uniform. I don't want to go to school. And to be honest, you could make going to school fun and interesting, right? Even to an adult audience. I mean, Fire Emblem Free Houses exists. The famous Wizard franchise exists, and it wasn't in Scarlet and Violet, so I'd like to see them do better on that front. What I would like to see in terms of tone when it comes to Pokemon is something more like Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I would argue was exciting for all ages. It wasn't exactly an adult story, it wasn't grim or dark or scary, or it didn't have adult themes. You were still playing as a kid, but it was still compelling and interesting as an adult, and I'm assuming it was for younger audiences too. I think a lot of the time people make the mistake of underestimating the kind of stories that younger audiences want to see, and they don't want to feel pandered to and like it's a story made for kids and is kid friendly and stuff. I'm not saying it needs to be edgy or anything like that, or push the boundary of what's acceptable, not at all, but I think Legends Arceus is a very good example of the kind of tone that should be struck. I was interested, and it wasn't the most crazy, engrossing, amazing story in the world, but it kind of took me off guard that, you know, I was kind of partway through the game, and I was like, I care about these characters, I care about exploring this world, and I would like to see that again. Also, I was about to say I don't want to get the legendary Pokemon right at the start of the game, but if I'm being honest, the way they handled Miraidon was actually really good. You know how I said by the end of the last 2 hours of the story was really good? That actually factored into it, so yeah. Again, no, I do still yearn for, like, oh, it's a legendary Pokemon that's hinted at throughout the story and becomes more important the further through it you get. And I don't want it to be handed it to us. I would like it to be a challenge to defeat and catch. I would like it to be interesting again, I suppose. Now, every Pokemon since X and Y has had a gimmick. We had Mega Evolution, we had Z-Moves, we had Dynamaxing, and we had Terrestrialization. And I think this kind of thing is hard to predict and think about, because a lot of the time I feel like it comes out of left field, but this time I really decided to sit down and think about what would I like to see in the form of a new gimmick, a new system, a new region-specific phenomenon in a new Pokemon game that could be really interesting and fun. And I landed on fusion Pokemon. Now, this isn't a new idea, right? There's been a website that's allowed you to fuse Pokemon sprites together to make new Pokemon since, like, the 2000s, I believe, like the late 2000s. And there's a very famous ROM hack called Pokemon Fusion, which allows you to fuse any two Pokemon together for untold options of different combinations. I don't think the feature needs to be that extensive or crazy, and I don't think it would be easy to do with, like, 3D models, and I think it would mostly come out janky. What I would like them to do instead is make it more of a handcrafted approach and have, much like you would design a Mega Evolution of a Pokemon, you know, individually designed combinations of Pokemon that can fuse together. And they can be brand new Pokemon, and they can be old Pokemon, and they can be brand new Pokemon fusing with old Pokemon. So, for instance, you could have Charizard fuse with a new gen Pokemon to make a Charizard something, right? Like, maybe if, for instance, a new Pokemon was like a mechanical kind of a Pokemon, you could have like a Mecha Charizard or whatever, right? That's just going to sell itself. And while I don't think about game design in these terms, Pokemon and Nintendo and all that stuff do, so I should say it's a very marketable gimmick as well, right? You're creating new models, much like people like with Mega Evolution and Dynamaxing. You're creating new models which you can sell as plushies. Think about it. And it's got like the whole terrestrialization thing of like a Charizard fused with, for instance, the Venusaur. I don't think that would work, but like that would be like a fire grass type, and you don't see those too often, and that would be interesting in terms of meta, right? I'm not a huge competitive Pokemon guy, so I don't really know how it would shake things up on that front, but you get the impression that it would. I just think it would be neat, okay? I like the idea. I think it would be cool. Also, I think they should start experimenting with regional variants of more famous Pokemon. Like, they started doing that with the Sword and Shield DLC, right? With, like, the Galarian, like, versions of the legendary birds. They should start doing that for starters. I wouldn't mind a new region variant of a Bulbasaur. You see so many people doing fan art of like electric type Bulbasaur, like dark type Bulbasaur, ghost type Bulbasaur. There are so many options available that they should explore. But again, maybe one of the ways to explore that is allow Bulbasaur to fuse with Sandshrew to make Bulbashrew or Sandsaur. Okay, the naming needs work, but you get the idea. Now, the next thing I have on my list is something that was not in the leaks, so don't worry. But I still think it could happen. And this isn't even something that I particularly want, because I'm not a Gen 5 guy, but I think Pokemon Black and White remakes are on the table. Because when you think about it, right, there was nothing about remakes in those leaks. Not that I remember, anyway. And last time they did a remake, they outsourced it. So maybe the reason it wouldn't be in those leaks is because it's not on their databases. It's somewhere else. I haven't seen people speculating about remakes really since Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. And I think that's partially just because those remakes were a bit lackluster and weren't what a lot of us wanted. But I do think that they still sell well, right? I think it's weird that we've stopped talking about them all of a sudden. And I think Pokemon Black and White and Black 2 and White 2 would be excellent candidates for a remake. Especially since with Pokemon Legends ZA, we skipped Black and White and went straight to Kalos, and I think that's interesting. Why did they do that? Maybe because they didn't want people burned out on Unova if there was an upcoming remake. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are 5 years old this year, so I don't think it's out of the question. It's also a strongly requested remake, or at least it was before Gen 4 came out, so you know, I know they have been shaking things up with the release formula lately, with the Legends games and all that, but I don't think that means that the old remakes are dead. And hopefully my Gen 4 loving ass suffered so that you Gen 5 lovers could thrive and they learn lessons from the Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl remakes about what not to do. As for updates to current games, I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't really care all that much. I think they've kind of done what they wanted to do with Legends CA. I haven't picked up the DLC yet, but I haven't actually finished that game yet. But, you know, maybe do some kind of event in that game where I know they did a thing where, like, you could go encounter Mewtwo and stuff like that. Maybe do another one of those. And then also what I would like to see, just because this is a very selfish request, I've just reached endgame in Pokemon Violet for the first time, really, and I've just taken down my very first Black Terror raid, my 7-star raid, and got my Feraligatr the Unrivaled, and I found it to be a very satisfying experience, like, researching how to do that, looking up builds of the kind of Pokemon I should be trying to find and, like, train up to encounter that kind of thing and not die. I would like them to do some kind of event in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for the 30th anniversary. I don't know, maybe with, like, some of the Gen 1 starters and legendaries and all that. Honestly, this is one of those things that I think is kind of expected. I would be excited to see it. Could also be kind of a last hurrah in that game before Gen 10 comes out, right? I also think we'll see something new about Pokopia. That's on the horizon. In fact, it'll probably come out, isn't it like early March it comes out? So it's probably within the same week as this Pokemon Presents, I don't know. And you better believe we're going to be hearing about Pokemon Go, Pokemon trading card game, Pokemon trading card game Pocket. We're going to be hearing about Pokemon Cafe Remix, a game I'm not sure anyone's actually played. I don't know if that game actually exists. Has anyone checked? It could be a cryptid. Oh, and finally, to end this video with a slightly more interesting prediction, I think we'll see some Pokemon Champions gameplay. And like all we know about Pokemon Champions so far is that it exists and is being developed, and I think it's supposed to come out this year, right? So I think we're definitely due like a overview about what it is from like a not just a conceptual level of like it's this competitive battling game where all the previous gimmicks are available at once, and you can kind of like transfer your Pokemon in and out and stuff. But like, what does it look like? Like, what stadiums do you fight in? Is there a progression system? Is there a single player kind of element to the game where you're fighting for a tournament? Or is it purely multiplayer? There's still stuff to learn about that game. I would like, I'm on the cusp of being interested about it. I'm really not a competitive Pokemon kind of a guy. I like the raids. I like the raid battles and Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. That's where I hang my, trying hard at Pokemon cape. But if it's good enough, and especially if it has single-player elements, which I don't think it will, I could see myself being interested. So yeah, Pokemon Presents is a week away, and those are all of my thoughts. Thanks for checking this video. As a reminder, please don't post anything about the leaks in the comments, because I would like to be surprised, even though I have glanced at them, and there are also going to be other people who have not glanced at them and do not want to know anything about them. So be mindful of that. But other than that, leave a comment down below letting me know what you would like to see out of the Pokemon Presents, what you think about Fire Red and Leaf Green being available on an eShop, are they too expensive, etc, etc. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in whatever I just happen to make next, who knows.